Welcome, everyone, to the Developmental Milestones and Early Intervention Services in Howard County webinar this evening. My name is Debbie Killian. I'm with the Central Branch of Howard County Library System. We'd like to thank Kim Collini, Special Educator and Program Head of the Early Intervention Assessment Team for the Howard County Public School System, ages birth to 5. The team of presenters include Stephanie Curtin, Special Educator, Morgan Gralla, Occupational Therapist, Vanessa Thornton, Speech and Language Pathologist, and Bethany Nero, Physical Therapist. Developmental milestones. They are skills that most children can do by a certain age, and they can include things like walking, speaking, and playing. This presentation will discuss some developmental milestones for children from birth to 5 years old. Information will be shared by a multidisciplinary team, which includes special education, speech language pathology, occupational therapy, and physical therapy. Gain understanding of the ranges of typical development and when to seek out resources for your child's development. This presentation is being recorded and it will be made available on HCLS On Demand YouTube.
All right, hello and welcome everybody. This is our presentation on developmental milestones. Here are some of the things we're going to cover this evening. We'll talk about an overall introduction to milestones, the different areas of development that we cover. We will go through the presentation by specific age ranges, and at the end, we will share resources to support development. Developmental milestones are skills that are expected to be shown around a certain age. They're observable behaviors or physical behaviors that all children achieve at different rates, and it does help us track typical development across the different developmental areas, including your physical development, which includes fine and gross motor, your adaptive development, your cognitive development, language and communication, and your social and emotional skills. What is typical? It is a really hard question to answer, and there are so many different ranges of what is typical, but here's one good example that we can use to help explain it. Children do develop at their own pace, and one example here shown is the height and growth and weight chart shared by your pediatrician during well checkups. As you know, your child may not be on the same growth curve as another child, but what we hope to see is that they stay on their same general growth curve throughout their childhood years. You may think of milestones in the same way. The children might develop them at a different pace from another child their same age, but as long as they keep progressing and the quality is what we would expect to see, then that is all fine and typical. Now let's talk about the different developmental areas that we might look at as an early intervention assessment team. It might look a little different from the categories that you see here, but this also shows how it can be broken down. Adaptive development is usually embedded within physical motor skills. Sensory processing runs across all the developmental areas. Again, physical development includes your fine and gross motor skills, and then it's the other ones we've already discussed. Cognitive development is often thought of how your child learns by thinking, problem solving, their memory, short-term memory and long-term memory. Reasoning plays into the problem solving and just how they approach new tasks as they are presented with them.
So communication is the process of exchanging messages, and there's different areas that fall under communication, such as receptive language, that would be the understanding of language, Expressive language would be the output of language. It's the ability to express our wants and needs. Social language would be how we use our language to interact with others. And articulation is really the production of speech sounds. So language is what we're really going to focus on today for the purposes of this presentation. But if you want to learn more information about articulation in our references, I would advise you to go to asha.org. And on that website, you'll be able to find out more information about at what ages your child should produce particular sounds.
So gross motor is part of the physical development. This is mainly the larger muscles of the body, the large muscles like the posture and your legs. This is the gross motor milestones are those that are sitting, rolling, walking, going up and down stairs, and other large motor movements which serve as the basis for fine motor.
And then fine motor refers to the small muscle movements of your hands and your fingers. And these are skills that help with grasping and manipulating the things that you interact with in your daily life. And then we have adaptive skills on this list, and you can think of those as self-care skills, things like dressing and feeding. And these skills require applying both gross and fine motor skills to perform them. So for example, with dressing, it requires gross motor skills for weight shifting and balance, as well as fine motor for grasping clothes to pull them on and off and manage fasteners.
I got it. Technical error, apologize. Let's talk about social emotional development and what it includes. You may think of it often as your relationship with adults, which are the first relationships a child forms in their life with their primary caregiver, moving along to their relationships with peers. It also helps children learn how to understand and express emotions, not only the ones they are expressing, but how to read facial cues and social cues from other adults and children in their life.
And then we have sensory processing, and this refers to how the body takes in sensory information about the environment, sends it to the brain to interpret it, and then produce a response. It happens continuously and influences skill building across all developmental domains. So now we'll go deeper into the skills that we'll generally see within different age bands.
So we're going to ask that you start thinking and give yourself a knowledge check. We're going to ask, at what age do you think a child should sit up unsupported, self-feed finger foods, put two words together, play with a peer? You don't have to ask, or you don't have to answer it anywhere, but we would just like you to start thinking about when you think that would typically happen. And this is what we're going to kind of go over in the rest of the presentation to know what is more typical development.
All right, with each age range, we are going to generally talk in the same order of cognitive, language and communication, movement and physical development, and then finishing with social emotional skills. And of course, with such large age ranges, it's hard to touch on every single milestone we might look for. So we just picked a few highlights for each age range to share. In the cognitive area, one of the very early things you'll see is a child learning how to explore toys. Now, they may not have the motor skills yet to actively explore their environment, but they're beginning to reach, mouth, and explore toys that way. And they're getting early communication skills by opening and closing their mouth, crying to express hunger, communicating in other ways that involves your cognition and your thought process.
In the area of language and communication, your baby will start to react to loud noises. They will start turning their head when they hear your voice. And also, this is the time that babies will start making various sounds when you talk to them, like ooh and ah, they'll start cooing at this time period.
This is also when we start to build the foundation of movement, where the baby will start to hold their head up. They'll start rolling on their back. This generally starts from the side and then rolling onto their back. We start putting them in tumming time for their arms to start bearing some weight. They start sitting with support, and that's closer to the 0 or to the 6 months range.
And related to fine motor, we're looking at voluntary grasp development during those first 6 months, so that they're now able to open and close their hands on their own to grasp toys and bring them to the mouth.
And socially, similar to the other areas, your child will start to attend to people. They will begin to recognize familiar faces and familiar people. They will get their very first social smile at around the age between 6 weeks and 2 months old. They will learn how to laugh at around 4 months old, and they will use these skills to try to gain your attention. Now let's take a look at this, this video. It talks about some important communication milestones in this age range. Let's hit play. You can see they start to make eye contact and start to engage with the adult by making faces. Them kicking their feet in excitement, listening and responding. You can tell by their facial expressions as well how they are responding. And I know you can't hear it now, but this baby is beginning to babble in response to the adult interacting with them. So those are just some highlights of what you'll see in the first 6 months. Now we're going to talk about some tips and tricks to help facilitate these developmental milestones that were mentioned. And I think one of the most important in the early months is tummy time. Children learn to develop their head and neck muscles by spending time on their tummy. And since we do not put children to sleep on their stomachs any longer, we need to find other times during the day to build in supervised tummy time so children can still work on this skill. It also allows them to help explore the floor and eventually leads to other skills for exploration. Sensory toys that they can mouth and feel with their hands are so important for their development to learn about the different textures and feelings and tastes going on in their environment. You as the adult caregiver are so important in developing back and forth play with your baby, whether it's verbally or with a toy back and forth. And you can use things like talking, reading, and singing to your baby to help facilitate all these developmental milestones. Now we're going to move into the 6 to 12 month range. And you're going to start to see a progression here where I do want to point out that so often we see in these examples that one area of development is contingent upon another. It's hard to develop isolated skills without having the skills from the other areas. So you will see some overlap. So for example, now a child can explore in a greater way using their mouth and hand. They can reach further to get more toys in their mouth. Cognitively, they're starting to understand that when an object is out of sight, that it still exists. So they'll track it and watch it fall to the ground, for example, like a piece of food off their high chair tray. And they will also begin to develop container play by putting objects in. And it doesn't have to be a store-bought shape sorter. It could be any container you have in your house and any object they can get their hands on.
In the area of language and communication, this is the time where your baby will start making a lot more sounds. And actually between 10 and 12 months is when that first word might emerge. Your baby will also stop for a moment when you say no, and they also will start to point and wave and show objects.
Babies will then build on their foundational skills, and they'll start to sit unsupported. They'll start to pull up to stand on couches, furniture, and they will begin to creep and crawl to access their environment.
And their
All
fine
right.
motor skills are
Sorry,
developing.
Morgan.
So now that they can both grasp and release items, and this allows them to interact with much more things in their environment. They can also transfer them hand to hand. They're picking up small things between the tips of their thumb and their pointer finger. Cheerios are a great example here, and they can support their own bottle for drinking.
Socially, babies really enjoy engaging with themselves in a mirror. They start to recognize their own reflection and will start to imitate some of the things they see in the mirror. They're laughing out loud. They enjoy social games like peekaboo. And they also might begin to develop what we call stranger anxiety, where even a familiar person like grandma or grandpa who they have seen before, they might be especially clingy to mom or dad during that 7-8 month period, even though it's someone they've been left with before. So that is considered very typical at that age.
And here's just a really nice video example of this time of life. And here we see that the baby is sitting up, holding on to and releasing those blocks. This baby is starting to crawl across the floor to find other toys. And here comes this little girl coming across looking like she's going for mom. We're going to start throwing things and interacting. Here's that pincher grasp of picking things up. So some tips and tricks for this age group. We're going to practice sitting upright. Of course, we want to start out with that, with having a pillow or a blanket or yourself behind them. So as they start to learn their balance, they aren't hurting themselves. We want to move toys slightly out of reach to encourage movement and visual tracking. We want them to stand up with their hands held. We want them to dump out blocks of a container, dump blocks out of a container and to put them back in. Parents don't generally like that one so much, at least the first part, but that putting them back in, that's really building that grasp and release. We want them to blow raspberries, that rude noise that you can make with your mouth, and we want them to babble. To really work on their communication, you can repeat your baby's sounds and say simple words with those sounds, like buh, buh, book, or buh, buh, bottle. You can talk or sing to your baby about what you're doing. You want to ask for behaviors that you want. So instead of saying, don't stand up on the chair, you could say, time to sit. And always those turn-taking games of passing a toy back and forth, having a conversation, even if you don't know what they're talking about, just having that discussion and making up a story that you want to tell. And then you can say more about that. It's a fun age.
All right, the next age range we're going to cover is 12 to 18 months. And in the cognitive area, this is where you really see a burst of imitation. So children watch and observe, and they're going to pick up objects that they've seen you use yourself, or they've seen you use with them, like a phone, and pretend to talk on a phone. They're going to try to drink out of an open cup and pretend to want to drink out of your cup. They're going to understand that a book is used for reading or labeling pictures or pointing to pictures. They're also going to begin to imitate household chores. They might imitate you washing the dishes or unloading the dishwasher, vacuuming, or doing yard work.
In the area of language and communication, this is the time where your child might start attempting to put two words together. For example, they might start approximating more juice. They will start looking at a familiar object when you name it, and also start following simple one-step directions like give me, put in, pick up. And then last, during this age, children will start to nod and shake their head yes and no.
This is when your children start to run away from you and you have to move everything up a little bit higher. And they don't stay where you put them. So they'll start to walk without holding on to anything, and they get fast really, really quickly.
And fine motor skills are improving to start using tools for specific purposes. So for example, a child can grasp a thick crayon and make marks on paper, maybe your walls. They can now drink from a cup, and they may try to use a spoon And they'll help with dressing by removing some items like socks and helping to push their arms through their sleeves.
All right, socially, children now know how to clap, which obviously involves motor skills as well, but they're clapping when they're excited. They're able to show that emotion that way. They're going to start showing love and affection to stuffed dolls and stuffed toys, and hopefully to the adults in their life. They're also going to develop something we call joint attention, and this is so important for future development in many of the areas. An example I can give is when you're walking outside with your child and an airplane flies overhead. Not only will they point, they'll look up at the airplane, but they will look back at you to see, did you notice also? Do you see what I'm seeing? And you can see this in many different environments around this age.
So now we have two videos. The first one is emphasizing the value of pointing, and then the second one is an example of imitation. So in this video, you see the little guy in the classroom. He's starting to point to a picture. And then that's his form of communication. He gets what he pointed to. And then in the second picture, here's an example of imitating that action. Again, this is a good age to start kids in regards to helping out with household chores. So in this age range from 12 to 18 months, you really want to start pointing to interesting things that you see in your environment, different vehicles. If you're outside, you can point out, that is a red truck, or I see a big car. You also want to highlight any animals that you may see in the environment, and just really highlight anything that you see within your daily routine, whether it's during mealtime or if you're out and about shopping. Just point out things to increase your child's vocabulary. At this age also, it's good to start repeating and adding on to what your child says. So if your child is outside and they say, look, car, you could say, yes, I see the big red car. So you kind of want to just repeat and add on to what they say to expand their vocabulary and sentence length. And you also want to talk to your child in the language that you are most comfortable using, because multilingual children really develop language skills just as other children do. So you will not confuse your child or cause or worsen their speech. The important thing is just to keep using the language that you are comfortable using. Also at this time, as we mentioned before, you can model household chores, washing dishes, sweeping. And then also during this time, it's okay if kids eat with their hands. They can drink out of a sippy cup. And you do want to introduce smaller tools at this time. The thing is that smaller hands, smaller tools. So just choose things that are appropriate for the child at their age. Also, you want to teach your child wanted behaviors. So an example of this would be if you have a pet and your child would pull the pet's tail. That's when you would just want to model how to gently interact with pets. You want to focus on that wanted behavior, and you want to use positive words, and also definitely hug and give kisses when you witness the desired behavior. And then also, this is the time that if they do have to transition to a new caregiver, you want to bring preferred objects or toys to really help comfort your baby during that time.
All right, this is our last 6-month age range we're going to talk about in the cognitive area. You're going to see your child start to problem solve more by attempting to use switches, knobs, and buttons to make things happen. Their cause and effect has developed to a point where they can experiment with their problem solving skills to figure out how to get things open. Some of that reciprocal play back and forth. They can push a car back and forth, push a ball back and forth. And they're also becoming more aware as their vocabulary grows on how to sort shapes and colors. They're aware that things have a certain shape and a name goes with that, and that they also might be described by the color because they've heard this vocabulary around their environment.
In the area of communication, at this point, your child should be able to use and understand at least 50 different words. And it would be from different vocabulary groups. They should be able to understand a variety of food items, toys, animals, and body parts. At this point, they also should be able to point to at least 2 body parts when asked. And also, they should be able to communicate by using words to ask for help.
This is the next step in losing your child in your house. The baby will start to go up and down the stairs with support and then without support. And there will be a day when you put them on one level of your house and they will be on another before you know it. They will also kick a ball. They will also run. They will also run into the ball to kick it. So they're really just running around and causing chaos, which is exactly what we want from kids this age.
And related to fine motor, a child is better coordinating both of their hands so that they can do two separate actions, such as holding something in one hand while manipulating it with the other. They show more dexterity to manipulate those knobs and switches on their toys, and they have improving control over tools, scribbling with crayons, and more successfully eating with a spoon.
And socially and in emotional development, your child is starting to be aware when others are hurt or upset. They're beginning to develop empathy, and they're not sure how to respond sometimes when they see someone hurt or upset. They might try to comfort them by patting a friend on the back if they look sad, but they also might look to the adults in their lives to see how you react in order to know how to react to that person who is hurt or upset. So it's a good time to verbally guide them through that and say, oh, look, mommy's giving them a hug. Maybe that will make them feel better.
So here we have two videos. The first one is a nice example of that two-handed coordination to accomplish a task. And the second shows a child running in a pattern that's typical for this age. So you can see the child's holding the container with one hand while removing the lid, getting a nice little treat for themselves, and then putting that lid back on. And this friend's running across the playground to shoot a basket. So tips and tricks for this age include letting your child play some simple dress up, things like using a firefighter hat or a stethoscope to play doctor, using toys that have some cause and effect aspects to begin teaching how to make things work, incorporating those features like knobs and switches to move around, talking to your child as you do things and go places, describing what you're doing as you go through your routines, and telling stories and reading to your child every day.
All right, now we're going to start covering a broader age range. We're going to talk in year groups. So obviously a lot more happens than we're able to share within this presentation, but here are some examples. So cognitively, previously your child was using the real object in their pretending. They were imitating, but now they're actually pretending. So, oh, if I can feed a green bean to a doll, maybe I can pretend this block is a cracker and feed it to a doll. They're also becoming more aware of common dangers. They might not know to stay away, but with your prompting, they're going to know that the stove is hot and that's a place they have to avoid. They might have already learned the rule that I have to hold a grown-up's hand when I cross into the street. And as their color and shape knowledge develops, they should probably be able to label and identify at least 1 to 2 colors.
In the area of language and communication, at this point, your child's understanding of vocabulary should definitely increase. So when you're looking at a book, you should be able, or their child should be able to point to things in the book when you ask them. Also, children at this age are starting to ask more questions, who questions, what questions, where or why questions. And then also during this time, your child should be able to say their first name when you ask them.
We are building on all of the foundational movements that we talked about before, and then we are going to see your child start to jump off the floor with both legs. So initially you'll start to see them reach up for something and go on their tiptoes, and then they will bend down into a squat, and eventually you'll be able to see air between the floor and your child's feet.
And their grasp and dexterity is improving. A child's better able to coordinate both their hands to work with smaller items like stringing beads or making a macaroni necklace. They can use a fork to spear food and can remove most clothes and are starting to be able to put on some looser clothing.
Most children at this age have had some exposure to either children in a childcare setting, within their neighborhood, at a community playground, and they're mostly engaging in what we call parallel play. They're playing next to other children, but they are beginning to interact with more and becoming to come up with simple little games. At the lower end of this age group, children might have a hard time being dropped off in a new setting. And that's okay. That's typical to be upset leaving your primary caregiver. But what we want to see is the child is emotionally able to regulate their bodies enough to calm down within a reasonable amount of time. And I would consider that 5 or 10 minutes. And it's kind of like the daycare provider always says, they're fine 5 minutes after you leave. But as the adult dropping the child off, you're the one that leaves with the picture of them crying and upset in your head. All right, let's take a look at some of these examples of some pretending and some playing next to other children. So you can see just literally the example of feeding the block to the child. That block is acting as food. And here are 2 children playing in a sandbox in a community preschool setting. And they're doing the same thing or similar things with similar objects, but they're not really interacting with each other. But now with the ball, you're seeing more interactive play. All right, here are some tips and tricks for this age range. Free play doesn't mean run free, as Bethany would have them all do. Just kidding. But free play allows them to explore and learn new things based on their interest. And child will increase their vocabulary and learn how to play when they are interested in what they are playing with, as opposed to the adult opposing what we would like them to play with. You're going to see and also encourage increased independence with dressing. Now, sometimes you might have to get out the house really quickly, and that can be very challenging. So a good tip is to offer your child a choice within dressing, such as, I'll put in the first arm, you do the second, or help me pull up the pants, stand here, hold on. It's a good opportunity to model sharing and how to take turns with siblings or peers that they encounter. If maybe you're coloring with a crayon, you might say, let's hand it to so-and-so and let them have a turn, and model that back and forth. Again, another burst of vocabulary happening in this year. You can't describe enough things in your environment. The children will take it all in, even if they don't duplicate that vocabulary right away. Another good way to build their movement and their cognition and their social engagement is to sing songs, do finger plays, have them imitate those finger plays. Nursery rhymes have rhythm to them and are easier to repeat back and remember and recall. All right, now we're getting into almost getting ready for kindergarten, but not quite there yet. So during 3 to 4 years, your child has another burst of skills where everything expands. They can name more colors, they can name more shapes. They will likely be able to sort colors and shapes. They might be able to sort things by more than one attribute, like size and color. All the big red circles go together. When they hear a story or you're able to read to them, they might anticipate what comes next and be able to tell you, especially if you read familiar books with them. As they are drawing and expanding their motor skills, they're going to add on, they're going to recognize that what they are drawing from the cognitive perspective, not the motor perspective, but from the cognitive perspective, they know they need to add details in their pictures. The sun might have the rays coming out of it. There might be more than one blade of grass. A person is going to have more than just a big circle for a head at this age.
And during this time period, your child's expressive language also is increasing. So this is the time where you should be able to have conversations with your child and at least 2 exchanges. You say something, they say something, you say something, they say something. So you're now participating in a lot more conversations. And they're also expanding their vocabulary to the point that they can start describing things. So if you show them a picture or you're looking through a book, they should be able to tell you what's happening.
Here, for physical and gross motor, we're going to be catching a large ball. We at some point between 2 and 4, we will also start seeing throwing a ball.
And here a child is better able to manage the force that they apply to items to do things like throw a ball, as well as accurately pour a drink or serve themselves food. Then their fine motor dexterity is improving and they can unbutton some larger buttons. And they are using the tips of their fingers to hold a crayon to draw pictures with simple lines and circles.
All right, and socially, we really see pretend play burst out during this age range. They're actually pretending to be someone else. They can take on the concept of a role. I can play mom, I can be dad, I can be a teacher, a firefighter, police officer, I can be an animal, so many different things, and they will have the language and the play skills to go along with that character. You also will see empathy continue to develop. All the good modeling that the adult caregiver gave early on, the child will be able to do that without imitation. They're going to spontaneously hug someone who needs comforting. They're going to understand when you might need comfort and either bring you a comfort item or give you a big old hug.
So unfortunately, in this video, you can't hear the audio, but this is an example of the conversational turn taking that should happen at this age. So in the video, this little guy, he's eating something and his mom asks him if it's good, and he's like, yes. And she's like, well, thank your uncle. So he thanks his uncle. And then she's like, do you like it? And he's like, yes, I like it. So they're having this conversational turn taking a back and forth where she says something and he makes a comment. And this is what you should see consistently during this age. So some tips and tricks during this age period is have your child dress up and role play. This really will help your child understand how others talk and act. So they can dress up, as a firefighter or a teacher or a doctor. And then during these dress up role playing situations, you can work on communication. Also during this time, it's good to start talking about your child's emotions, sad, happy, mad, and give them those words to explain how they're feeling. And then also give them plenty of opportunities to draw, to color, and to paint, to work on those fine motor skills.
All right, ages 4 to 5. All the early work, all the problem solving, all the exploration leads to the concepts that we think of a child needs to be ready to enter school. They're learning to count. They can count things by rote, where they're just counting. They can also count objects. They can identify some numbers by sight. They might be able to name some letters, and typically children first learn the letters in their name, and they might learn the first letter of their name first. And they're beginning to demonstrate an understanding of time. Today is a Saturday, we stay home, we don't have school, or after school today, we're going to go to Target. So they're beginning to understand that things happen in a sequential order and that things are relative to each other in the concept of time.
So in the area of language and communication, again, their language is increasing. So they should start saying sentences with at least 4 words. During this time, they should be able to also answer object function questions. So if you would ask your child, what do you do with a crayon? They should be able to say draw or you write with the crayon. Also during this time, they can answer those simple questions about a book. So when you're reading a book and you're asking, what, who, where questions, they should, even emerging why questions, they should be able to respond to those questions.
At this point, for physical and gross motor, the children are really exploring their balance and refining all of those skills. So you may see them hop around on 2 feet or on 1 foot, 1 foot then the other. They may look like bunnies hopping around in your garden.
And at this age, a child is better able to manage fasteners, so they can button smaller buttons. They might be able to latch a zipper, but even if you latch it for them, they could definitely pull it up. And they're developing better ability to form what we call pre-writing strokes, vertical, horizontal, diagonal lines, and circles. And they'll combine them to form basic shapes and letters.
All right, socially, your child is beginning to expand those parallel play skills to some early interactive play skills to true cooperative play. where there's rules to a game. They can take turns and do it with another child their similar age. Another important one to start talking about is attention span, which is on, I don't know if it is seen on the slide, but we're talking about they can attend to an adult-driven activity for approximately 5 to 10 minutes. And I know we talk a lot about needing attention to task in order to enter kindergarten and be able to learn. And this is around the age you'll start to see that, not just attention to a screen or the television, but to an actual adult-driven with directions, back and forth task. They should be able to sustain their attention at this age.
So while unfortunately we don't have sound for this video, this was a good example of some of acting in pretend play. Even if we play, we can see some planning from this little boy who's a firefighter. The teacher's asking him what he's going to do. And it's a nice example of cooperative play. He's describing how he's going to save his friends. So tips and tricks for this age range include playing games like I Spy, where they can scan their environment and name items and colors, continuing to reinforce learning colors, shapes, and sizes in daily tasks and drawing attention to them. Matching activities also help reinforce this learning and can be as simple as matching socks or sorting utensils, which will certainly help parents out at home. Letting your child teach you how to do something supports their communication and reinforces their own learning for that task. And continue working on those social skills for playing with others, like sharing and turn taking.
So we wanted to add some more information about screen time recommendations. And this is taken from the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. And for babies under 18 months, no screen time except for video chatting with family or friends. A toddler ages 18 to 24 months, some screen time with a parent or caregiver, such as educational programming, which would include some shows like Miss Rachel or Daniel Tiger, Sesame Street, Blue's Clues. And then children who are from the age of 2 to 5 years old, up to 1 hour of screen time per day with a limit of 3 hours on the weekend. Also, some other things to keep in mind, turn off screens during family meals and outings, use parental controls for older kids so you can block certain sites, avoid using screens as a pacifier, a babysitter, or use screens to stop a tantrum. Also, turn off screens and remove them from your child's bedroom 30 to 60 minutes before bedtime. And then, as with everything, just be sure that you're giving your child opportunities to play, read, move, and laugh during the day.
All right, now we're going to talk about some resources to support your child's development. The first slide we're going to look at talks about some community opportunities. So community opportunities can be from very unstructured to very structured, such as a school-based program. Giving your child opportunities to play with other same age peers, even if it's a mommy and me class or at your neighborhood playground. You can find often neighborhood Facebook groups have opportunities. There's caregiver education programs that we'll talk about as we move on to some other slides. You might find resources through your healthcare providers, and we have a wealth of programs through the Howard County Public School System for young children and their families.
The Howard County Library System has a lot of resources available on their website, which you can access by going to their homepage at hclibrary.org and then accessing the Youth and Educators tab and looking at resources for 0 to 5. There are classes for all ages. Some are offered in bilingual classes as well as in Spanish, and some are identified as being sensory friendly. There are online classes for parents on YouTube, like a series for potty training. Of course, there are books for all ages, all topics. And there's a unique toy library that Howard County Library offers where you can take out games and puzzles and toys for your children currently looking at their catalog, they have over 300 items that you can use across their system for toys and games for your children.
Howard County also has a lot of programs that are available. We have the Howard County Office of Children and Families, and within that, we have the Family Institute, which is a community outreach program. They offer classes and workshops aimed at children as well as parent-specific topics. They share family-friendly events happening throughout the county. And you can also subscribe to their monthly Parent Pages newsletter. The Family Support Center is a physical location in Columbia, and it offers classes, workshops, and playgroups. The Parent's Guide to Howard County is a large booklet of all the resources available in the county to support children and families. It includes childcare information, community resources, parent support groups on different topics, health services, parks and recreation, and other government and community services. Howard County also has a lovely and wonderful parks and recreation. I just lost the word for what that is, but they have a lovely parks and recreation center. They have seasonal activities. They have additional information on programs focused on young children, therapeutic recreation. And if you go onto their website, they have each playground has their own page, which also allows you to kind of look and see if there's something new you wanted to try.
All right, next we're going to talk about some more educationally driven programs within Howard County. The Judy Center are early learning hubs that prepare children for success in school and life. They work through community partnerships and promote school readiness for children ages birth through 5. They provide resources for finding comprehensive full-day childcare, early care, education services. And we also have Head Start, which is a similar program that supports children's growth from birth through 5 and centers around learning, development, health, and family education and well-being. So kind of treating the whole family to get not just the child ready for school, but the family ready for school. Then we have some more specialized programs if your child is having a developmental delay in one or more areas of development. The Howard County Infant and Toddler Program serves children from birth through 34.5 months of age. And what we look for in the infant and toddler program, if you make a referral, is if your child is demonstrating a 25% delay or greater in one or more of the developmental areas, they would qualify for services based on a coaching model, where instead of direct service given to the child, we are coaching the parent and training the parent how to intervene with your child throughout your daily routines. So you are still the primary caregiver and getting advice and resources to facilitate your child's development. As children get older and closer to the age of 3, if you have concerns about their development, a referral to childfind might be more appropriate. We are also looking at developmental delay as well as other disabilities that may affect young children. And there are different qualification criteria, but that would be the place to start if your child is over 34.5 months old, all the way up until their 5th birthday. Or if they have not started kindergarten yet because of when their birth date falls, it would still be an appropriate referral location.
And then there are a few milestone trackers that could be very helpful. The first one is the CDC Developmental Milestones. There's a milestones tracker that is available in English and in Spanish. And this is very helpful to kind of gauge your child's development as they grow. The Birth to 5 program offers a developmental screening passport to really track your children over the years. So again, it's a way to kind of track their development as they get older. And then for the pathways.org, they also have a baby milestones app. And that app really provides a lot of free resources to parents in the areas of motor skills, sensory, and communication development. And then the Basics Insight, that's a site on the Howard County government website, and it really provides information to parents and caregivers about social, emotional, and cognitive skill development among children from birth to age 3. The website also contains a lot of tips and videos that you can watch. And in addition, you can also sign up to receive weekly text messages that contain information about your child's development. And it also provides activities that you can do with your child as well. And those weekly text messages can be provided in English or Spanish.
That concludes our presentation. If there are any questions or concerns, we would love to hear them. Please feel free to reach out to us at childfind@hcpss.org. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did.
Thank you so much. That was so interesting. Thank you to the entire panel, for everyone involved. We've really, really enjoyed this presentation this evening. It was very, very interesting. And just as a reminder, the presentation has been recorded and it will be available on the Howard County Library System on demand YouTube channel. So thank you all very much. Good evening, and we will end the webinar now.